Well, we're now just 24 hours away from the first time trial. This is stage 14, and we're also going to get a real taste today of the mountains, Paul, as we climb up to the finishing line, which is at Pian Cavello.
It certainly is a very difficult finish for the stage, but the first part of the stage very flat indeed, and all of the riders in the main field realising that this is the major rendezvous for the climbers of this year's Tour of Italy, and the crowds, Phil, are always magnificent in this part of the world, and Ferrigato, well, they're all cheering for him.
Yes, it must be absolutely wonderful to be a famous racing cyclist in Italy. Of course, it's not so good if you're off form, like Ivan Gotti clearly is. It'll be a big test for Ivan today as last year's winner of the Tour, because it's a long, long slog to the top of the mountain.
It's a 15-kilometre climb at the end of this stage, which is 165 kilometres in all, and it climbs up to 1,270 metres. So certainly all of the big guns will have to show this afternoon, and it is difficult to have a mountaintop finish the day before a very important time trial as well. So it'll be interesting to see just how good Marco Pantani is, Phil, because on the short climb so far he's showed himself to be almost impossible to follow, and today is a race for him. But early on in the race we had a breakaway of 6 riders going out in front, trying to steal the show and the sting out of the climbers.
Just one Spanish rider and all of the rest are Italian, and now it's a matter of chasing them down. Michele Bartoli passing through. There is the pink jersey for the first time in his career of Andrea Noe, and he knows that Bartoli will do all he can to help him keep that pink jersey today. The showdown undoubtedly is going to come on the climb. It's long enough for the climbers to get stuck into it. And a nice haircut there on the Kelme rider, Paul. I think it was Ribeira.
I think he was expecting the weather to stay at 35 degrees Celsius as it was in the southern part of Italy. But as we go up into the mountains and the Dolomites followed by the Alps, the temperature certainly is going to drop an awful lot. But now that leading group of 6 riders have been limited now down to just 3, and the main field picking up the pace as we approach the foot of the climb, and it's going to be very difficult indeed for these 3 leaders to hold off the main field.
Canzonieri leading the pace here, but they haven't escaped the clutches of this peloton, who are moving forward with all of their big names. And also riding here at the back of the group here, number 167, Zanetta.
Amazing, this guy Zanetti. He's always in the breaks. He's a very aggressive rider, but very rarely does he come up with the victory. But certainly he always looks for the breakaways. Behind on the road, the main field being led 14 seconds in arrears by the ASICS squad of Michele Bartoli, and of course the overall leader at the moment, Andrea Noe. For him, a great day in the pink jersey, but there you can see the 3 leaders. They're in the same straight now as the main field.
Well, Noe had a very good Giro d'Italia last year, and indeed the year before. But now, of course, he's having his best ever season with his stage victory and his one day in pink. And if he wants it to be any more, he's got himself in a good position here. He must be feeling very nervous because he knows this climb gets a bit tough towards the end. He knows the strength of people like Alex Zülle and Marco Pantani, and of course Pavel Tonkov. Gotti is suspiciously not seen at the front at all. Here's the wipeout moment, and the main field, all the pacemakers are Festina for Zülle.
Well, it's obvious then that these guys from Festina feel that Alex Zülle can regain the pink jersey this afternoon, because he certainly has ridden very well so far, and it was only, I think, a lapse of concentration by Festina that allowed him to lose it a couple of days ago. But for him, he realises the important parts of the Tour of Italy is right now. The mountaintop finishes are starting to come, and as well as that, we've got the time trial tomorrow. But Mapei too feel that their man Pavel Tonkov is in ideal form to try and take the overall lead. There he is, wearing number 91. The Russian rider, former winner of the Tour of Italy, has got a very strong squad around him.
The main field, Pantani, we just caught a glimpse of there. He's nearly halfway down the pack at the moment, so he's not in any mood to make an attack very early on. The Seiko boys now probably setting the pace, not for Mario Cipollini on a climb like this, but for Ivan Gotti, who is there, 3rd wheel in the red jersey. It's very important he comes through this stage good to convince himself rather than the tifosi that he is going okay.
Moving up into 2nd place is Misaglia, the rider who this year won the Tour of Langkawi a long time ago, it seems now, in February. A very difficult race in Malaysia, all part of the preparation of the Mapei squad for this very important Tour of Italy, because for them, the Tour of Italy is one of the most important races on their calendar.
Andrei Kivilev setting the pace. What a great first season he's had for Festina, having won the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic as an amateur in Australia last October, and now coming in as a late replacement for the team, having a magical season. He really is. He's won a number of smaller stage races, and is a real star of the future. Comes from Kazakhstan, speaks English, by the way, but keeps telling me he doesn't.
On the left-hand side, you can see the yellow jersey of Konishev. He, I think, is a little bit worried about being so close to the front, but realizing today is an important day for Marco Pantani. He'll stay there for as long as possible to try and help his teammate. But you can see, Phil, this climb now certainly starting to make a lot of riders' legs suffer, and Michele Bartoli feels once again that he can put the pressure on at the front of the main field. He's had an incredible first 14 days of this year's Tour.
Well, he's looking over his shoulder to see where the pink jersey is of his teammate Noe. And the boys are gathering around him because Mercatoni Uno have moved up on the right. 101 is Pantani and 102 is Garzelli, Stefano Garzelli. And quite clearly Bartoli switched off, Paul, because he realised that Noe wasn't going with the move.
He was looking to see what his teammate's position was. He didn't want to put him under too much pressure because there's an awful lot of friendship goes on in these teams. Although Michele Bartoli is regarded as the #1 leader of the team, he obviously doesn't want to take the victory away, the pink jersey away from his teammate. And look at that, there's the pink jersey riding an incredible race this afternoon, trying to stay in contact there. And there is Laurent Roux, the man who held the pink jersey just before Noe did. But the big pressure on the front is the yellow squad here of Mercatoni Uno.
These guys must cringe every day they go out towards a mountain top finish because they know they're going to have to hurt themselves and destroy themselves just for their team leader, Marco Pantani. That's the name of the game. They are now getting a grip of this race and they are trying to launch Marco for the stage win. By the way, he hasn't won a stage win in the Giro since 1994, and today is the first real perfect finish for him.
Well, there's Pantani there, just behind his teammate Garzelli, and right on his wheel, Alex Zülle wearing number 78. Queuing up behind him now is Pavel Tonkov as well, because they all feel certain that very shortly Marco Pantani is going to launch that vicious attack, which is well known in the fields of international bike racing, because once he goes, it is so very difficult to follow his acceleration.
Well, still Mercatoni Uno set the pace. The rider doing the work at the front is still Garzelli. He'd like a little bit of help. And as they continue on the climb, it looks as though Falconi has got on the front now, and Pantani is the next man. When you run out of pacemakers, you have to do it yourself, so wait for a sudden acceleration. It could come at any moment. Oh dear me, Gotti's in trouble, and this is not what he wanted to see.
Well, this was supposed to be the big day for Gotti. He's ridden a perfect Tour so far. He's been sitting there in the main field, allowing Mario Cipollini to take the limelight, but there's the attack we were waiting for. Marco Pantani has gone, and Pavel Tonkov has gone with him.
Oh, and Pavel Tonkov just concentrating there. Not even daring to look too far ahead. He's just thinking and concentrating and holding on to that wheel of Marco Pantani. The attack that everybody knew would come sooner or later. And once you run out of workhorses, you've got to do it yourself. And that's why Pantani is so good. He can.
Well, Pantani waiting for the steepest part of this climb before he launched his attack, and the steepest part is 13%. It steadies out a little bit as you get towards the summit, but the steep part of the lower part of the climb here is certainly playing into the hands of Marco Pantani, and one man who wasn't able to follow that acceleration was Alex Zülle.
Well, Zülle, and also the pink jersey of Noe. We're not expecting him to win the Tour of Italy, but we thought he might show some resistance, but he hasn't shown any at all. And Tonkov has sat up and slowed down. He's gone into the zone he can't cope with, and he's having to slow to recover, while Pantani just sits there like all good climbers and pedals.
What a remarkable climber he is. You can see the plaster on his right knee there, the sequel of his crash yesterday on that very dangerous descent down to the finish line, but that doesn't seem to have had any effect on his bike pedaling ability this afternoon, because every time he slows and doesn't feel happy with the speed, he gets out of the saddle and accelerates. In contrast to the style here of Pavel Tonkov, who uses a very big gear, uses his power to try and keep rolling up the mountain. The style of Pantani is much more explosive.
But it's not just the stage win he wants today, Paul. He's also thinking of getting time gaps. With the time trial coming tomorrow, the likes of Tonkov and, of course, Zülle should put time into him in the time trial. And so he's trying now to show a little bit of resistance, and hats off to him for that. Gotti's still in trouble, and Pantani at 10k to go, and the gap is opening.
Well, Pavel Tonkov riding just for him what is already a time trial, just trying to make sure he doesn't lose too much time on the acceleration of Marco Pantani, and the gaps further down starting to open. Leading them round there in third position on the road is in fact Alex Zülle. He's followed by Guerini, and a little further back in this group I thought I caught the sight earlier on of Luc Leblanc. There he is sitting on the back, and one man disappearing from the top of the leaderboard in the Tour of Italy this year is Ivan Gotti.
He's the big loser on this stage at the moment, and the man who stands most to gain too is Marco Pantani. Just keeps out of the saddle, hardly any body movement, just makes those legs pump a little bit harder. Tonkov is still riding ahead of the chase group where Zülle is in, and so too is the Magliarosa of Noé. We can have a look for ourselves now. There's a couple of riders trying to get off the front. One, as you say, is Luc Leblanc, and the other one is Zülle. So they are trying to get on terms, at least with Tonkov.
In fact, it wasn't Luc Leblanc. He's been replaced there by Guerini. Luc Leblanc obviously not able to follow the acceleration there of Alex Zülle, but it's a remarkable performance here by Marco Pantani. He's been omnipresent really since the very first week of this Giro d'Italia. He's always been looking for the moves, but it's amazing. I'm always surprised at the style of Pavel Tonkov when he rides a mountain here, because he never seems to be under pressure. He just seems to ride at his very own pace.
Well, there is Pavel, his mouth wide open, and the crowd know him well here. Since he moved from Russia into Italy, he has been a star of the Tour of Italy every time he's taken part. We first noted him when he won a stage of the milk race, the old British Tour of Britain in Nottingham a few years back, when he was riding for the famous Red Guard of the Soviet Union. 10 seconds the gap between the two.
Well, that's not an awful lot of an advantage for Marco Pantani to take over Pavel Tonkov. And you see Tonkov is not panicking. He's riding sensibly, keeping his tempo well within his own range. He knows what sort of level he can ride at. He didn't want to try and match the acceleration of Marco Pantani because he realizes that nobody can. And a little bit further behind him, 14 seconds in fact, is Alex Zülle, and Guerini there wearing number 141 of Polti. So the race still very much in a handful of seconds.
Well, it did appear that they were coming up to Tonkov, but I think he's settled down. He's gone through that patch where he's now got his second breath, because Pantani is not racing away for him at all, and Tonkov really was very wise there when he dropped back. He realised he couldn't go into the sort of zones where Pantani lives, but Pantani again isn't ripping away from the field like he's done in the past, Paul.
He certainly isn't. He's not opened up the massive gaps, but I think it's because as we get to the summit of this climb, just 5 kilometers remaining, we're getting onto the actually slightly easier slopes of this mountaintop. That's why he's not managed to open up the big gaps on Pavel Tonkov. And there in front you can just see the car of Mercatone Uno, and it is still hovering around the 10-second mark, the clock telling us it's 14, and Tonkov riding sensibly, riding in a very good rhythm indeed. But just behind Tonkov, Alex Zülle has made a very good recovery.
Well, Zülle, you know, if he continues to hold Pantani, he is going to reclaim the leader's jersey, because he's got about 20 or 30 seconds now in hand over Noé. If he reclaims the pink jersey, he'll be doing it for, well, he'll be reclaiming it for the second time. It'll be the third time this Tour he's actually won it.
Marco Pantani's not worried about pink jerseys or anything at the moment. All he's worried about is staying in front of these riders. In fact, Zülle has ridden sensibly. He's caught Pavel Tonkov, and they're joined by Guerini. But there you can see, again, although Marco Pantani made the attack much earlier down the slope, he hasn't opened up very much of an advantage. It's now 15 seconds, but he's doing an awful lot of work to try and get a few seconds advantage over the rest of the group.
Well, it's all over for Pantani. He's going to win the stage, and that's a first for 4 years, and what a 4 years it's been in between with his terrible accidents, and he's come out of it so well to get back to the top. He wins the stage of the Giro d'Italia. That'll mean an awful lot to him. And as he comes in, the clock starts, and it shouldn't be too long before we see the arrival of Zülle, Guerini and Tonkov. And the cheeky Tonkov has found the strength to take second, Zülle third there. Well, that should be good enough now. We're waiting for the arrival of Noah. He's a long way back. That should be good enough now to give Alex. Here comes Noah. Just under 2 minutes back, so Alex Zülle reclaims the rider's pink jersey, and that is absolutely formidable. But Marco Pantani quite clearly is a threat in this year's Giro d'Italia, even though the time trials may not run in his favour, and they certainly will run in the favour of Alex Zülle, and tomorrow he has a real chance now of increasing his overall lead in the time trial. And the new leader in the King of the Mountains, Marco Pantani.